Hello everyone, welcome back to Unraveling Politics, a weekly political analysis show. I hope you guys had a great weekend. Let's get right into it. So folks, we are in a government shutdown. Today we're going to focus mostly on the politics of the shutdown rather than the actual implications, which I covered last week. The only edit I have from last week is apparently there are conducting trash collection at national parks and monuments, at least so I read, and that's a departure from the past. Usually the trash just piles up and it's cleaned up later. We would have gotten a jobs report on Friday, but that has been delayed because of the shutdown. If you aren't aware, the government's fiscal year begins on October 1st, which was now 5 days ago, and they're supposed to pass a budget by then. It has been decades since that's happened, so Congress usually passes what is called a continuing resolution to extend current levels. How long it extends it usually depends. It could be a couple of weeks, could be a couple of months. We didn't get a 2025 budget until March of this year, and that was after several extensions. When Congress doesn't pass a budget, it shuts down non-essential operations. Probably should have explained that before, but that's basically what happens. The politics of it, however, has remained unchanged from last week. Republicans want to pass a bill to simply allow the government to reopen under 2025 era spending levels for about 6 weeks until the week before Thanksgiving, so this whole blow-up could happen again in a couple of weeks. On September 30th, the last day we were open, the move to keep the government open got 55 votes for it, 45 against. 3 Democrats joined Republicans, I believe, and then I think 1 Republican voted against it. I believe that was Rand Paul. 60 votes were required for passage, so it failed. Both sides are blaming the other, which is what we'd expect. J.D. Vance said, who he might be our president one day, he said, you don't take the government as a hostage because you want to engage in negotiation about healthcare costs. Let's do that negotiation, but let's do it in the context of actually opening the government and ensuring these essential services are provided to the American people, end quote. Now, JD, this is exactly what your party has done for years. In 2013, Republicans did literally the same thing, and they shut down the government for, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks. So I don't want to take any lectures from JD about what you should be doing. I know he wasn't in politics then, but a lot of people who are against the shutdown now were involved in that shutdown, like Ted Cruz in 2013. So I don't want to hear anything from JD Vance about that. Chuck Schumer said, and the bottom line is, when I was majority leader, we had 13 times to vote on a budget. And you know why there was no shutdown? We sat down and negotiated with Republicans every time. They got some things and we got some things. Well, he was right. Chuck Schumer was majority leader for 4 years, from January 2021 until January 2025, and we did not have a shutdown under the entire period. The only time we've ever had a shutdown was when Republicans were in charge of the Senate. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. Only time in recent memory, in the 2013 shutdown, that Democrats were in charge of the Senate. But the only time we've ever had a shutdown in recent years has been when Republicans were in charge. Trump did meet the Democratic leaders, and there seemed to be some agreement, but there was not very much. What is absolutely unacceptable is the political interference on government operations. For example, the email signatures of government employees has been changed to blame Democrats for the shutdown. And the civil service is supposed to be apolitical. The civil service are the people that work in the government, or for the most part. Some of them are political, most of them are not. And trust me, we want it to remain that way. Both sides do have a point here. It's usually Republicans that try to hold the government hostage, but when when they did, Democrats always were the ones that negotiated it. So who do I blame for the shutdown? Well, truthfully, I blame both sides pretty equally. How does the public view it? I think that's more important. Well, here's a graphic from Twitter /X, I still call it Twitter, for various different pollsters from before the shutdown. This is about a week old now, and clearly Republicans are getting most of the heat for this. So if you look at the poll, it shows all of them are leading by, Republicans are leading, quote unquote leading. They're actually losing by double digits. Some of them as much as 25%. It's probably not as high as 25%. It's probably somewhere around 15 if I had to guess. So that is, I'll put that graphic on your screen now if you're interested. And Republicans are claiming that Democrats want to give health care to illegal immigrants, which is wrong because you need a Social Security number to register for Obamacare. And even if they did register for Obamacare, if they somehow could do that, that would be incredibly risky because they would be risking deportation. Under the Biden administration, maybe not, but for now, yes. Therefore, I suggest I kind of think Democrats are going to be the ones. No, I think Republicans are going to be the one to cave first. The only way this stalemate ends is if one or both sides gives in. I would suggest Democrats not try to make too many demands this time around because, as I said, there will be more opportunities, at least one, maybe two or three, to extract more concessions. Because remember, this bill doesn't fund the government for a whole year. It only does it for 6 weeks. So even if, say, we move 3 weeks down the line and they finally pass a bill, they're going to have to pass another one at some point in the future. So that's where we're at the moment. And by the way, members of Congress are still getting paid, in case you're wondering. So they're getting paid. Don't worry about them. You will not be seeing Ted Cruz. He was not going to skip any Cancun visits in the next few weeks. Then there's the threat of layoffs. I briefly mentioned this last week, but we now know a little bit more. The Trump administration has vowed to massively reduce the size of the federal workforce using the shutdown as an excuse. The White House Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett said on Sunday, which is yesterday, that layoffs will begin if the president decides that shutdowns are going to absolutely nowhere, if the shutdown negotiations. However, this risks escalating the standoff. And if I were on the Democrat side and this happened, I would dig in even deeper. I would increase my demands even more. They have the polling advantage. Republicans do not. So as long as they have the public on side, they can go as long as they want. As for the legality of this, I don't know. A lawsuit has already been filed from a union representing federal workers, and they wrote, the cynical use of federal employees as a pawn in congressional deliberations should be declared unlawful. And I absolutely agree. These are real people, and they have real jobs, and they are our friends, our family, our neighbors, and our communities, as I posted on YouTube last week. Then there's the threat of Trump cutting Democrat agencies, which is basically the president refusing to fund things that Congress has already approved, which would be illegal, but apparently since Doge, it seems like that's not actually legal anymore. But I know Nixon tried to do this. He tried to impound federal funding, and Congress had to pass a law to prevent that from happening. So the president is using a shutdown as an excuse to target states that voted for Kamala Harris. For example, $18 billion of infrastructure projects in New York City has been paused or canceled. And by the way, those are the home states of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. So we have the shutdown, obviously. I'm sure I'll have more to say in next week when we get there if this is not over. I kind of don't think it will be. I think we are going to have at least another week of this. No one really knows for sure. We have the shutdown, of course, but then we had a hot mic moment from a Democrat representative and Speaker Mike Johnson that I thought was really funny and I think you should see. So let me play that for you now.
The president is unhinged. He is unwell. What are you doing?
A lot of folks on your side are too. I don't control.
Oh my God, please. That performance in front of the generals, that
I didn't see it.
is so dangerous. You know I serve on foreign affairs and appropriations. This is a collision of those two things. Our allies are looking elsewhere. Our enemies are laughing.
I just left.
You have a president who is unwell.
So Madeline Dean, a representative from Pennsylvania, says the president is unhinged and he is unwell. Then Mike Johnson looks down to the side and nods slightly, which is a sign that he agrees. Then he looks the other way and he stammers, "Oh, well, what are you doing? Your side is also you have crazies on your side too." Basically saying I don't control. It sounds like he was going to say I don't control the president. Then the representative cuts him off and says, "Oh my God, please, that performance in front of the generals," which we'll talk about later. And then Johnson cuts in again and says, "I didn't see that." And then the representative says, "That's so dangerous. I serve on foreign affairs and appropriations. This is a collision of those two things." And I'll pause for a moment. And I'm going to put Mike Johnson's face when she said this on the screen right now so that you could see this. I really hope you can because that's quite funny. It's clearly the look of a man who's ran out of cards to play. As she said, the representative said, "Our allies are looking elsewhere and our enemies are laughing." So basically, that's the end of what you need to know. So what do we make of this? Well, I don't think this will change much on the ground, but I do hope Democrats use this in their ads in next year, the midterms, even their own leader, the Republicans, saying the president is unwell. And frankly, there's some evidence to that. Overblown in my opinion, but there is some evidence. Representative Dean, who's actually not, she's not too far from me in terms of the district that she represents, mentioned Trump's speech in front of the generals. So let's talk about that a little bit. In Quantico, Virginia last week, which is south of Washington, D.C., there were some reports that I think were important and others that weren't so much, some parts. And I think, firstly, I think some of the stuff Trump chose to talk about was quite strange. For example, he was talking about Biden and the auto pen. Like, who cares about that? And I think what was the most concerning part of the speech was when he said, quote, "We should use some of the dangerous cities as training grounds for our military," which I don't know much about military history of this country, but I do know that deploying the military on the homeland, like in the United States, is very rare, and it may have never even happened before. I'm not even sure, except for during the Civil War. And he said, and the National Guard is not the military. They are different. National Guard is for the homeland, military is for external affairs. He also said, "We are under an invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms." And the reason why this is really concerning, at least to me, is that the rhetoric of the far right usually claims to be, they blame an enemy within, usually used on ethnic or racial lines. So I am concerned about that. And I'm not sure if it was Trump or Hegseth, but one of them said, "The era of the politically correct, overly sensitive, and don't hurt anyone's feelings leadership ends right now at every level," which is great because the military has definitely been wookified. That was under the 4 years of, to put it kindly, not much going on. On the flip side, I have to agree with them, as I just said. The department was unofficially renamed the War Department, so I guess the War Secretary, he was the one that said that, now that I remember that now. At the same time, plenty of things didn't happen. There was no loyalty pledge to Trump, no change in the oath of office, no purge of the generals, no demands of using the military for political purposes, unless you consider keeping our city safe as a political issue. So frankly, what Trump said was expected. At the same time, if any of these things do actually occur in the future, I would definitely be concerned. And say that Trump did try to stay in power somehow, like there was a January 6th attack in 2029, and the military does side with the president, then we would probably fall into dictatorship. And that's speculation, of course, which I don't like to do, but that's something to keep an eye on. Anyway, so that is all for this week, a little bit shorter than usual. There was also some movement in the Middle East. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. That's why I'm not going to talk about it. And we are a domestic affairs show. That's what we focus mostly on rather than international affairs. So if I have to choose between international and domestic affairs, I'm always going to pick domestic. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. If that does get anywhere, I'll let you know. So one last time, thank you for tuning in. And as always, I will see you next week. Bye-bye.